The Duke first noticed the new neighbor on a gray morning, when the fog sat low on the fields. Duke Alastair Rowan stood by the tall window of Ravenshire Estate, watching black cars move slowly through the iron gates of Ashcombe Manor next door. The place had been empty for years. No visitors, no lights, no noise. Now it looked awake. The cars were not fancy. No crests, no flags, just clean, dark, and quiet. Men stepped out and stood still, scanning the land like they were counting something only they could see. Alastair felt uneasy. People with titles announced themselves. They sent letters. They followed rules. These men followed none. His butler, Mr. Finch, cleared his throat. "Shall I inquire, Your Grace?" "Yes," Alastair said, "immediately." One man stepped forward from the group. He wore a simple coat, nothing expensive, nothing loud. He looked around the land slowly, calmly, as if it already belonged to him. Then he looked up, straight at the Duke's window. Their eyes met across the fields. The man gave a small nod, not friendly, not rude, certain. Alastair stepped back from the window. For the first time in years, Ravenshire did not feel like the most powerful place on the hill. By evening, the house was full of questions. The kitchen staff whispered. The gardeners stopped working early. Even Mr. Finch seemed distracted. "No record yet," Finch finally said. "The property sale was approved quietly, paid in full." "In full?" Alastair asked. "By whom?" Finch shook his head. "A company newly formed." That did not comfort him. That night Alastair hosted a small dinner. Old friends, safe faces, lords who liked to gossip more than think. "Did you hear about Ashcombe?" Lady Whitmore asked. "Bought in cash." "Strange times," another man replied. Alastair smiled but said little. Later he walked the grounds alone. The fog had returned, thicker now. Across the fence, Ashcombe Manor glowed with warm light. He stopped. There were men standing along the edge of the land, not guards in uniform, but guards all the same, watching, waiting. Alastair turned back toward his house, his heart beating faster than it should. Whoever lived next door was not afraid of being seen. That worried him most. The letter arrived 3 days later, heavy paper, no return address, sealed in black wax. Mr. Finch hesitated before handing it over. Alastair broke the seal himself. "Mr. June Park requests the pleasure of meeting his neighbor." No title, no family name, no explanation. Alastair frowned. Men without titles rarely bought estates like Ashcombe. Still, refusing would look weak. He agreed. June Park arrived exactly on time. He was calm, polite. His English was smooth and careful, like every word had been chosen early. "I respect old land," June said as they sat. "It carries memory." Alastair studied him. "And yet you arrived without warning." June smiled gently. Quiet arrivals last longer. They spoke of weather, of boundaries, of history, nothing dangerous, and yet everything felt dangerous. As June stood to leave, he paused. "You value reputation," he said. "Yes," Alastair replied. "So do I," June said softly. "That is why we should avoid misunderstandings." After he left, Alastair remained seated. The room felt colder. He could not explain why, but one thought would not leave him. The man next door knew exactly who he was. The next morning, Alastair walked the gardens with Mr. Finch. "Sir," Finch said quietly, "I noticed lights burning late at Ashcombe last night, guards patrolling the perimeter." Alastair frowned. "They aren't supposed to have guards," he muttered. Across the foggy field, he could just make out figures moving. Calm, silent, purposeful. "Who are these people?" Alastair whispered to himself. Finch shook his head. "I cannot say, Your Grace, but they are disciplined, trained." Alastair's unease grew. The estate he had always known as safe now felt fragile. At breakfast, letters arrived from distant relatives and estate managers. Each mentioned Ashcombe Manor, the new neighbor, and nothing else. No gossip, no explanation, just reminders. Alastair studied each one, a creeping suspicion forming. Something about June Park was not right. He glanced toward Ashcombe again, and he swore he saw a figure watching him from a window. By afternoon, rumors began spreading through the village. The local blacksmith claimed he saw unfamiliar men unloading crates late at night. The baker whispered of a foreign carriage that appeared and vanished without explanation. Alastair dismissed them at first, yet a small knot of worry tightened in his chest. At dinner, Lady Whitmore mentioned it casually. "Do you think the new neighbor is dangerous?" she asked lightly. Alastair froze. He laughed, forcing calm. "I am sure he is simply a man of means." But his eyes kept drifting to the fog beyond the estate wall. Later, alone, Alastair walked to the highest tower of Ravenshire. From there, he could see Ashcombe glowing through the fog. A single figure stood at the iron gates, watching him. And this time, Alastair was certain. The Duke was no longer the most powerful man in the valley. The next morning, Alastair received a visitor. It was the village constable, an elderly man named Harris. "Your Grace," Harris said nervously, "I must speak frankly. Strange men have been seen near Ashcombe every night, armed, watching, always watching." Alastair nodded slowly, trying not to show fear. "I thought it best you knew." Alastair thanked him, but as Harris left, a chilling thought came to him. They are not here for the village. They are here for me. He spent the day packing Ravenshire's halls, reviewing maps and counting exits. By evening, a black carriage appeared silently outside Ashcombe Manor. A man stepped out, alone this time, calm as if he owned the valley. Alastair's gaze met his through the fog. The Duke could not shake the feeling. The man was waiting. That night, Alastair could not sleep. The wind carried faint voices from Ashcombe, low and indistinct. He rose, dressed, and walked to the edge of the estate. Through the mist, he glimpsed movement. Guards patrolling, shadows passing by windows, a man standing in the moonlight perfectly still. Alastair swallowed hard. The figure looked at him directly, not angry, not friendly, only certain. He turned and disappeared behind the manor gates. The Duke's heartbeat thundered in his ears. Alastair realized one truth. He had never faced anything like this before. Morning brought letters, each more cryptic than the last. One reads simply, "Reputation is fragile, handle it with care." Alastair reread it 3 times. No signature, no seal. The message was clear. Someone knew his secrets, or at least someone knew enough to scare him. He summoned Mr. Finch. "Find out everything about the new neighbor," he said firmly. "Names, associates, background. I want nothing left hidden." Finch bowed. "At once, Your Grace." Alastair spent the day walking the estate, his eyes darting to Ashcombe. And he noticed something chilling. The guards at the gate moved as if following his every step. That afternoon, a carriage arrived unexpectedly at Ravenshire. A young woman stepped out, dressed plainly but elegantly, with eyes that seemed far older than her years. "I am Lily," she said quietly. "I was sent by Mr. Park." Alastair frowned. "Sent by?" "She wishes to speak with you," Lily replied. Despite her calm, Alastair felt a shiver. Something about her presence was unsettling. She led him to the garden, where the fog had grown heavier, wrapping around them like a blanket. "I do not know what he wants yet," Lily said, "but you must listen carefully. He watches everything, even when you think you are alone." Alastair's heart raced. For the first time, he realized, Ashcombe Manor's new owner is no ordinary neighbor. That evening, Alastair sat in the drawing room, Lily nearby, recounting what she knew. "Mr. Park does not answer to anyone," she said. "He respects only power and secrecy." Alastair frowned. "Secrecy?" "Yes," Lily whispered. He watches those who watch him, and those who do not obey vanish quietly. Alistair shivered. A sudden knock at the door made them both jump. It was Mr. Finch, pale. "Your Grace, someone is at the gates. They demand to see you, alone." Alistair looked toward the foggy horizon. He knew, without a doubt, the Duke's world was about to change forever. Alistair stepped carefully through the fog to Ashcombe's gates. A single figure waited, June Park, calm, perfectly composed. "You came," June said, his voice soft but firm. "I had no choice," Alistair replied, keeping his tone steady. June nodded. "You should know, power is not always visible. Sometimes it hides where you least expect it." Alistair felt a chill. Behind June, shadows shifted, guards, silent, armed, moving with precision. "This is your first lesson," June continued, "in understanding why your neighbors may not be as they seem." Alistair swallowed hard. He realized then, he was in a world where rules he had trusted no longer applied. Inside Ashcombe, the manor was warmer than expected. June offered tea, perfectly brewed, fragrant and calming. Yet Alistair could not relax. Every step echoed with silent menace. "I do not frighten easily," Alistair said, meeting June's eyes. "And yet," June replied calmly, "you are here willingly." A servant passed silently, carrying a tray, never speaking, never blinking. Alistair noticed small details. The locks, the security, the way the windows were angled to see every approach. "This is meticulous," he murmured. "Preparation is everything," June said softly. "And power, my friend, is best wielded quietly." Alistair realized he was no longer simply a duke. He was a player in a game he did not yet understand. Later, Alistair returned to Ravenshire, his mind racing. He could feel eyes on him, even inside his own estate. At dinner, the servants were quieter than usual. The gardeners spoke in hushed tones. Even Mr. Finch seemed hesitant, choosing words carefully. A letter arrived without a messenger. "Observe, learn, respect, or suffer the consequences." Alistair held it in his hands, the weight of the words pressing down. He realized Ashcombe was not just a neighbor. It was a force, deliberate, patient, and unknowable. And the Duke had no idea how far it would reach. The following morning, Alistair received unexpected news. A distant cousin had called urgently from London. "Your Grace," the voice trembled, "I fear there is more to Ashcombe than any of us knew. June Park, he is not merely wealthy, he is dangerous." Alistair's stomach tightened. "Dangerous how?" he asked, his mind racing through possibilities. "There are whispers," the cousin continued, "of influence in the city, connections with men you never imagined. Even the authorities tread lightly." Alistair knew then that the fog hiding Ashcombe was not just physical. It was metaphorical, hidden power, silent dominance. He looked out across the fields, imagining the black cars, the silent guards, and the man whose calm smile masked a storm of authority. That evening, Alistair paced the drawing room. He could not stop thinking about the letter, the visit, the warnings. A sound outside made him pause, a soft step on the gravel. He rushed to the window and froze. A figure was moving across the foggy field toward Ravenshire. It was Lily. She raised a hand, signaling him to come outside. Alistair grabbed his coat and followed. "I must tell you something," she whispered urgently, "something that changes everything." Alistair's heart pounded. He knew instinctively that after tonight, nothing would ever be the same. Alistair followed Lily through the fog toward the edge of the estate. Her expression was grave. "They watch more than just Ashcombe," she whispered. "Even Ravenshire is under observation now." Alistair stopped, heart hammering. "How do you know this?" he asked, his voice low. "They have eyes everywhere," she replied. "And June Park, he notices everything, every move you make, every step you take." Alistair swallowed hard. The fog shifted, and in the dim light, shadows seemed to dance around them. He realized he was being watched even as he walked. That night, Alistair could not sleep. He heard faint footsteps outside his window, too deliberate to be the wind. He rose, moving quietly to the window. A figure stood beyond the iron gates of Ravenshire, perfectly still. June Park. Alistair felt a chill. The man nodded once slowly, as if acknowledging a challenge. And then he vanished into the fog. Alistair realized that Ashcombe Manor's owner was no ordinary neighbor. The following morning, a carriage arrived from Ashcombe. Inside was Lily, carrying a small black envelope. "Your Grace," she said, handing it over. Alistair opened it carefully. Inside, a single card read, "Meet me at midnight, alone, or your secrets will become my advantage." Alistair's hand trembled slightly. He knew he had no choice. He had to go. The Duke had to meet the Mafia king. At midnight, Alistair arrived at the gates of Ashcombe. The manor loomed in the darkness, its windows glowing like quiet, watchful eyes. June Park waited in the courtyard, calm, composed, almost serene. "Welcome, Duke," he said softly. "I trust you understand why I asked for privacy." Alistair nodded. "You are learning quickly," June continued. "Power is not always shown. Sometimes it whispers." A sudden gust of wind swept through the gates, rustling the leaves and sending shivers down Alistair's spine. He realized this meeting was not a conversation. It was a test. June led Alistair into the manor's grand hall. The walls were lined with paintings of stern ancestors, eyes seeming to follow every step. "You see, Duke," June said softly, "I respect tradition, I respect power, and I respect secrets." Alistair noticed subtle signs of strength, reinforced doors, silent servants, and the faint hum of hidden guards. "Why am I here?" Alistair asked, trying to hide the tension in his voice. "To understand each other," June replied, "and to ensure no misunderstandings threaten either of our estates." Alistair nodded slowly. But deep inside, he knew nothing in this world would ever be the same again. Alistair followed June through the grand hall into a hidden study. The room was dimly lit, lined with books, maps, and documents. "You see," June said softly, "power is not just wealth or title. It is knowledge, control, fear when necessary." Alistair studied the walls, noting charts of estates, names of influential men, even connections in London. "You know everything," Alistair whispered. "I know what is necessary," June replied, "and I know who to protect and who to eliminate." A sudden knock on the far door made Alistair jump. "Enter," June commanded calmly. A young man stepped in, bowing slightly. "Your Grace, the arrangements for the Valley's estates are prepared, as requested." Alistair felt a chill. Everything here was calculated, precise, and unseen. June turned to Alistair, his eyes piercing. "I respect you, Duke, but respect is earned, and threats are unavoidable." Alistair nodded slowly, realizing he was no longer in control. "You came here tonight," June continued, "to understand the balance of power, and you have seen it." A shadow moved behind a bookshelf, another guard silent, almost invisible. Alistair swallowed. The Duke realized that the man next door was more than a neighbor. He was a force, unstoppable and patient. "And one more thing," June said softly. "Some secrets are meant to stay hidden. Some cannot be revealed without cost." Alistair's pulse quickened. He sensed the danger was immediate, yet invisible. A sudden crash echoed from the manor's courtyard. Both men froze. A figure ran across the fog, masked, hurried, desperate. Lily appeared behind Alistair, grabbing his arm. "It's a warning," she whispered. June nodded, unperturbed. "Exactly. The world we live in has rules and consequences." Alistair's mind raced. who had dared breach Ashcombe Manor, and why. You see, June said quietly, even a duke can feel powerless when someone controls the game. Alistair swallowed, realizing the gravity. The man next door had already won. By dawn, the fog had lifted, but the tension remained. Alistair returned to Ravenshire, his thoughts heavy. He had seen the power, the control, the silent authority of June Park. He realized something chilling. The Duke's title, his estate, even his reputation, none of it mattered to the man next door. Letters arrived, black wax seals, warnings hidden in polite words. Alistair understood fully now. To survive, he had to adapt, watch, and respect the rules of a world he barely understood. And yet, deep in his heart, he knew he was only beginning to see the edge of a dangerous truth. Weeks passed, and the valley settled into uneasy silence. Alistair continued his routines, hosting dinners, walking the grounds, maintaining the estate. But Ravenshire had changed. He caught glimpses of figures in the fog, messages delivered quietly, the faint hum of surveillance he could not see. One evening, a letter arrived. You know now, power is quiet, patient, and absolute. Treat it wisely. Alistair read it, set it down, and looked across the fields at Ashcombe Manor. June Park's lights glowed softly, guards visible in the mist, the silhouette of the man who had rewritten the rules of this valley. Alistair knew one thing for certain: nothing would ever be the same again. And somewhere deep in the fog, he felt the quiet certainty: this is only the beginning.